4 games into the season, international break is here already. But in today's episode, we're going to be discussing our surprises, disappointments so far in the season. 7 points, sitting nice in the table, but can we continue this? Is it too early to say? Or have you been shocked and surprised by a few decent performances? And has your expectation changed so far? We'll be discussing that. Also, we'll be giving updates on what's been going on during the international break and more. Let's get started with Palace news. What is going on, people? Welcome to Live Palace News. Once again, we are here to talk everything Palace. As always, thank you for your support so far. We are very close to hitting 4,000 subscribers. Not that far off, around 125 left till we reach that mark. But as always, if you do enjoy the content, let's try and hit the like button, people. 100 likes and over that would be much appreciated. And also, if you're new here, subscribe to join the community, which has been growing. Look, before we get started, I just want to say, how's everyone feeling during the international break? It feels like ages, but it's only been 4 days since we've done a stream. Maybe I've been used to it as well, streaming every single day. I thought we'll take a few days off. We'll see what's been happening in those few days as well. There'll be a bit more of a discussion point, but this was always on the agenda. I always wanted to talk about this during the international break. Look, before I get started, I just want to say, make sure to get involved. Leave down your thoughts in the comment section down below. Join in with the conversation as well. That'll be greatly appreciated as well. It's been a long day. The weather since we last jumped on has changed in the UK. I'm sweating like crazy. There's a heat wave, but soon that'll be over, and soon the international break will be done and dusted as well. Where we'll resume to normal services. But look, I'll start off with this. Look, as I mentioned at the start of the show, we're going to talk about our start to the season so far. We're going to talk about some players as well, our surprises. There are a few surprises that I want to talk about, and also disappointments. Maybe some players that we expected a bit more since the start of the season. But overall, we'll start off with ratings. Send in your ratings as well. What would you rate our start to the season so far? Look, we have to include this, and maybe we're forgetting it as well when we're looking at, the points tally, how we're sitting on the table. Right now, sitting 7th. 4 games in, 7 points as well, which is great. And the reason why I'm saying it's great is because, remember, we've lost Zaha. And on top of that, Elise, another creative player, is out. We went into the season with Edouard and Mateta, which we'll talk about, as being our, striking our main forwards, which we've known from last season. There was a debate about whether they're good enough or not. We'll talk about that. Lost Zaha. On top of that, Elise ain't fit. So look, going forward, there was a lot of question marks. And despite that, we've got wins, 7 points, only 4 games. But I've been happy. And so far, during the international break, I can say that I could give the rating so far right now 8 out of 10. If we got anything against Arsenal, I would have simply gave it 10 out of 10 because of my expectations. I want us to be in the fold this season where we're talking about 7th or 8th. I want us to be there. I don't want us to go to March or April and say the season is done. Last season, I'll be honest, it was boring. It was boring as hell talking about 11th or 12th, 11th, 12th. I don't care about 11th or 12th. Last season, that was the main talking point. 11th, 12th, 11th, 12th. I want us to be in the fold this season. But also, I'm not taking it too far ahead. In terms of why I'm giving 7 out of 10, we can go through some of the games. I thought Sheffield United, nice win away from home. There was lots of people talking about, well, could that be a banana slip potentially for Palace? First game of the season away from home against a newly promoted side. But not only did we get the win, but we played well, apart from the first 5 or 10 minutes. We dominated the game, created lots of opportunities away from home, and should have got more goals. I was very impressed with that performance. Then come Arsenal. Let's be honest, we lost against Arsenal 1-0. And yes, Arsenal are not as good so far this season anyways, compared to where they were last season. But you're still facing Arsenal at home. We only lost to them 1-0 by a penalty decision, which could have been avoided if everyone was, awake and ready for that free kick. It was a switch off. And despite that, I thought it was a relatively solid performance. And then, we go and get a point against Brentford away from home, which I wanted. I predicted a 1-0 and we got. I was pleased with that, especially with second half performance changes there. And then, beating Plymouth as well, 4-2. Great comeback. Players coming off the bench, proving themselves again. And we saw it in the latest game against Wolves. 3-2 win. It shouldn't have been 3-2 because I thought we were the better side. And the scoreline makes the game look closer than it should have been, especially in the second half. First half was poor. But overall, some of the performances so far, considering that we got rid of Zaha and França, who's not fit yet. We'll see where he will play when he's ready. He hasn't been available. Elise hasn't been available. So we've been missing an attack. Despite that, some players have stepped up. I think it's been a great start. I truly believe that. And after 10 games, I can say probably whether we can become, an exciting probable force. But game at a time now, people. You take it game at a time, you build on, and we go from there. But look, let me go on the comments as well to get some of your ratings. I'm giving it a solid 8 out of 10. If you got point against Arsenal, that would have been a 10 out of 10 start for me personally. Luke saying 7, 8 out of 10, solid start. Beat who were expected to beat, lost to who we expected to lose to, and it drew a difficult away game whilst also progressing in the cup. Couldn't ask for much more. I'm on the same wavelength as Luke there, Mitch saying depends what we're judging against relative to prior seasons, relative to goals or pushing on. Well, it's not. It doesn't need to be overly complicated. It's just a general feeling your start to the season, what you expected. I think that's what it depends on. Based on my expectations, I've been very happy. So, Mitch, for you, what did you expect going into this, season in terms of these 4 games before the international break? And how would you rate so far? Have we exceeded expectations? Have we matched it? Would you have expected a bit better? Maybe you could have, but I don't know what else we could have really done. Stephen saying, think we've ticked all the boxes. Expected to beat Sheffield United and Wolves. Expected to draw with Brentford. I wouldn't say expected, Stephen, but maybe that's what you expect. What I wanted by the bare minimum. I think Brentford away from home is always a difficult tie. I think that was a great result. And expected to lose a close game against Arsenal. Fair enough. Alpesh saying quality start, got to be a 10th place finish. So that was the objective going into the season, what Roy said. Now we'll see whether we can achieve it or not. We'll talk about that in a bit more detail. Let me go through more comments as well. Isaac saying good start without Elise, which is key as well. When he's back, are you on the right and slop a bench? If everything goes smooth, we crack on. Now that's another discussion point as well. What happens when Elise comes back? Because he's training, he's out on the training pitch. And I reckon sooner rather than later we'll see Elise. Maybe if it's not for the Villa game away from home, maybe against Fulham. I don't think it'll take that long based on the videos anyways, but I'm not a great medical staff, so I won't be able to tell you the exact date, but it's looking good anyways, which is what Rich is saying as well for our start to the season. Sergeant, thank you and appreciate your super chat. He says, good start, would love some results versus big teams. Well, we got 2 massive games coming up against Man United, especially in the cup and also in the league as well. But thank you so much for your super chat. Really appreciate people for all of your support as well. Genuinely, the community that we're building here has been fantastic as well. 7 out of 12, says Nick. And Patrick saying 9 out of 10. We got the points that we thought we would get. Also, a performance against Arsenal showed the big boys won't push us around. And I'll be honest, we've been very good defensively. Well, it feels like anyways. I mean, the Wolves game, 2 goals conceded, doesn't make it look great. Plymouth, we didn't play our strongest 11. But against Brentford, yes, we conceded that goal. And that was, I don't want to dwell on the negatives, but I think that's more on a weakness down the right-hand side, which got exposed. But, against Brentford, how many shots on target did they have against Palace? I remember for the majority of the game, looking at the stats, and they only had 1. And looking at it now as well, they had 12 shots, but it doesn't say how many on target. They didn't do much against our defense. Arsenal, yes, they had a few opportunities there, but we have looked very good defensively. And I think that's the one thing that we can carry on. And one thing that's a massive positive, because as long as we keep them defensive performances up, I think we will naturally improve and attack with Elise coming in, with France being an option as well, potentially. So as long as his defense stays as it is, and I think Lerma and Decore have been excellent as well in terms of supporting that defense, I think the only way is up. I really do. Out of 12, I'd give us a 7. When Elise is back, we will be on fire, says Nick. 100% agree, Nick. Jim saying we have maintained the same level as last year, no more, no less. We're beating 2 teams who are likely to be below us at the season. But Jim, interesting point there. Remember, last season we did have Elise playing in them games. Yes, not Zaha, and I'll be honest, we haven't really missed Will so far, anyways. In terms of performances, of course, you would prefer him down the left-hand side than Schlupp, but he hasn't been like a great miss, such as Palace have crumbled. I think others have stepped up, like Jordan Ayew, which we'll be talking about in terms of the biggest surprises so far. But then again, you are saying that we've maintained it from what we had last season, but our squad right now, well, starting 11 on paper is weaker than last season because our main forward in terms of getting assists, which was Elise with 11, hasn't featured. So in a way, I get where you're coming from, but I think it's been even a bit more of an improvement in terms of results anyways from last season in terms of, missing key players and still managing to get these points out of 4 games, 7 points out of 4 games. Busy saying 7 out of 10, decent start to be honest, but I did expect just a little more quality versus Sheffield United and Wolves, to be honest. Sheffield United, it was our chance, right? We didn't take our chances. But then again, it seemed like Edouard is kicking on so far. It's only 4 games. I'm not getting carried away, but so far he has been scoring the goals. And not only that, let's talk about players now. Let's move on to players that's exciting me the most. I think Edouard is on the list. Mateta in the last 2 games has looked very solid. But I'm going to start off with mainly Jordan Ayew because I think that's been the biggest surprise. The main thing with Jordan Ayew has been his lack of production in terms of goals and assists. And I'll be honest, people, before the season started, you could have easily said, oh, when everyone's fit, Ayew's going to drop to the bench, Schlupp's going to drop to the bench. Schlupp, you have a point. But with Jordan Ayew, I don't think he will drop to the bench. And there's no way on earth he should drop to the bench. Because so far, he's won Player of the Month. So far, he's been our best player in terms of what we needed going forward. Getting assists, which is key. And this is now a talking point as well. What happens when Elise comes back? Because Ayew has been starting down the right-hand side. And down that side, he looks way more comfortable in terms of going down the wing and simply putting crosses into the box with his right foot. And last season, we saw it play down the left. But I think things get a bit more trickier now in terms of what you do with Elise. Elise has to come into the starting 11 when he's fit. But whether he starts down the right, where he has started all along, which means Ayew goes down the left, that is up to Roy. And that's going to be a massive call because remember, Edouard is scoring goals, but Ayew has been feeding him them chances as well. So you don't want to mess up what's already working. And if you put Elise down the left-hand side, then he'll be with a stronger foot. But then again, he wouldn't have much of a threat in terms of cutting in because it's going to be a case of, Elise down the left, putting crosses into the box. I think Elise's weak foot isn't as strong as his, left foot. So I don't think I'm expecting many goals and assists there. But maybe Elise's weak foot can do a job down the left in terms of cutting in. But you can't really move Jordan Ayew, people. Unless, we put Elise down the right and he's feeding Edouard like Ayew was, which he can clearly do because he had 11 assists last season. But then again, how would that impact Jordan Ayew? So for me, let me know what you guys think as well. What's been your biggest surprise so far this season in terms of players? It has to be Ayew. It has to be. I've been very pleased with him. He's been professional. And most important thing is he is getting them goals and assists. Because I've never really talked about his technical abilities. I think he's a fantastic footballer in terms of dribbling, beating his players, winning fouls. The problem for him has been in the final third, making that decision, scoring them goals, or getting assists. But Jordan Ayew so far has pretty much proved all the doubt was wrong. And he has been one of our most important players. And that Player of the Month is well-deserved. Ghana qualified for AFCON, says Nick. So he will be gone, I reckon, January time, I think, or, late Jan. But yeah, Jamal says, I miss Zaha. Yeah, you can't miss Zaha, but I don't think Palace have really missed Zaha, to be fair. Nick saying, I miss Hilaire. Shane saying, we have a wealth in football experience and Roy and a spine of good side. Just need to equal the signings with the quality that we have. Busy saying, Jordan has changed so much for the best so far this season. If he stays put in the starting 11 with Elise, Eze França. I mean, that it sounds exciting on paper. Hopefully, it works out. And Mitch saying, always rated IU, even when we're having a bad game, he puts in a full shift and makes opponents miserable. That I think is heavily underrated at times by Palace fans as well. Look, he's not always scoring goals against assists, but ideally, you do want a player with the goals and assists, 100%. I agree with that as well. But he has put in shifts for Palace. Even when he hasn't got goals and assists, he has had some very good performances. I'm not saying that he hasn't had bad performances as well, people. But I don't think he's been as bad as sometimes we make him out to be. I think sometimes we're too fixated on his goals and assists rather than what he contributes to the team, and his contribution is massive. His contribution has been massive ever since he's joined. And look, how much you signing for? £3 million, £4 million. That's an absolute bargain. An absolute bargain. It's worked out massively for us. Isaac saying Jordan Ayew was class on left wing when Wilf was out. Yeah, he was class because he was cutting in down the left-hand side. But how I'm looking at it now is we are feeding Edouard. Edouard is getting goals. Yes, it's only 4 games. He's getting goals by them assists from Jordan Ayew, putting them crosses into the box. Not only Jordan Ayew, we saw it with Mitchell as well in the second half against Wolves. He put in a cross as well. Right now, them crosses by Ayew seem like they have a good connection. It's working down the right-hand side. So I don't think it's a simple case of Ayew, when Elise comes in, Ayew goes down the left. Maybe that is the case, and hopefully it still works out like that. But Ayew has kind of earned his spot down the right-hand side as well. Elise needs to adjust to the team. He 100% needs to start when he's ready, but whether he starts on the left or the right, I think that is debatable, which we'll probably discuss when we know Elise is back to the side. Of course, right now we're just talking about it briefly, but when he's back, I think it's going to be a very good debate point. Tim saying, hey, all, I've been happy to the start of the season. At least good to see our place in the table as well. 100% agree, Tim. But then again, I'm not really looking at the table as much. I'm more looking at our points so far because the table can change. But yeah, it's great sitting where we are right now. But for me, it's game at time. Against Villa, we need to ideally get at least a point. I think that would be very good away from home. Mitch saying he is 31, so it might not be too long before pace starts to fade. So maybe we'll be rotated as the season goes on. I agree with you, Tim. 7th place is great. Yeah, 7th place is great. So for me, Ayew's been a surprise. Edouard, of course, we have to quickly mention him. I was thinking, and I've said it as well on these shows as well, is Edouard having an impact which we've seen Roy have on Eze in terms of confidence? Because he looks way more confident. And it's not just the goals. And I always say this, and I'll keep saying this. For me, what I expect from a striker, of course, unless you have like a Haaland who's, phenomenal and his goals are like 30 plus and all you can, main thing he can do is score goals. That's great. But we don't have that, of course. Edouard is not Haaland. So I expect him to contribute more than just goals, even when he's not scoring, come into the play, have better link-up play, look more engaged. And so far this season, he has done that. If I move away just from his goals, Edouard already looks improved. Of course, his goals make the stats, look even better from last season. But when just by watching him, by the eye test, Edouard already, you can see it. He has improved from last season. It's only 4 games, but I think that is because I don't know exactly the conversation, but there must have been conversations between the coaching staff and Edouard. He's not a bad player. He just, at times last season, he just didn't look as engaged as it should have been. It's I don't want to criticize him, but sometimes his body language seemed a bit off. But this season, he's up for it. He's up for it more than anything. He's up for it, and that's why he's getting more involved. That's why he's getting goals as well. And we've known that there's a player in him, but we haven't really seen him at Palace scoring them goals or getting involved with the link-up play as much. So that's a massive positive and a big surprise to me as well. Edouard has been fantastic as well as Jordan Ayew. Now Mateta, I can say he has been a surprise in terms of what we've seen in the last 2 games, but he hasn't really, he's come off the bench against Plymouth, which was great, and he came off the bench against Wolves, which was fantastic as well. He's been a surprise in that element, but for me, Edouard's been a bigger surprise because we've seen more of Edouard so far this season than Mateta. But saying that, if Mateta continues how he's coming off the bench and starts getting assists and goals, then right now, for the time being, that striker position that we've been talking about pretty much all summer and that we didn't really strengthen, we wouldn't really talk about it as much if both of them are scoring and getting the assists, which so far it has been great. Nick saying my Celtic mate said French Eddie could be lazy sometimes. Yeah, I don't know. It's just body language that I looked at, well, previous seasons compared to this season. This season, he just seems way more up for it. Shane saying Ed and JP linked up well. Who knows where it goes? Exactly. And now there's that as well. I mean, do we play with both of them on the pitch at the same time? We have really haven't seen it in the past before between JP and Edouard. I think in the short term is well worth trying. But then again, there's two things about it. One, when we have everyone fit, I probably wouldn't go with it. It could still happen, but then again, I'm just trying to think. It will most likely be like a 4-2-3-1 where Edouard can play as number 10. But I just think about Eze and Elise where they would fit. So in the long term, potentially not, but in the short term, especially against Villa, I think it's well worth trying. And that goes on to my next talking point about disappointments, and that is on Jeffrey Schlupp. He simply has not performed. I'm not blaming him for any type of games because we haven't had that many bad games, but he's been way too quiet. He's been way too quiet for me. He hasn't been involved as much. So for me, against Villa, it would make sense to try Edouard and Mateta together to see how they do for 90 minutes or however long they last. But the problem that we have is if you start both of them together, you don't have another striking option off the bench. Now, does that mean that Roy wouldn't do it because he would like one of Edouard or Mateta to come off the bench? That could be a factor to it. Maybe if you sign another striker, that would be much easier for them to start together. But then again, if they do start together, it could work out well, fantastically. But if it doesn't, then who do you bring off the bench? You can change the formation, to be fair. But yeah, the main disappointment has been Schlupp. That's why I wouldn't mind Edouard and Mateta starting together. For me, look, I'm not expecting Schlupp to get goals and assists every game, but I'm expecting way more than what I've seen so far. In terms of his touches, there's been times where he's our main, attacking force down the left-hand side. Of course, you can't be a Zaha replacement because Schlupp has never been there, but barely any touches, barely any involvement. And that's just not good enough. It's not good enough. And that's why I think if we're coming out of the international break, one thing that Roy needs to do so far, in terms of our season, some changes. Yes, we've had a good start, but probably Schlupp. Schlupp would be the main change because I just don't see what he does with possession, out of possession. And if we do change it about, now I'm not saying Rak-Saki, for example, if we do even change it about, bring on Mateta, maybe, play both of them up front or as an attacking force, then I would be happy with that. I would be happy with that as well. As I say, love Schlupp, but he's looking like a vegetable at the moment. Tim saying, do you think Schlupp is misused better as a super sub? Yeah, I think he is better as a super sub. And the main example for that is last season when he came on against United at home. I mean, at least he scored a free kick, but he had that energy to run for 20 minutes, half an hour. I think that's where you see the best out of him. And I'll be honest, I said this as well about Jordan Ayew. In the long run, I can see him, well, not based on how he started, but based on his previous form, I was thinking, Jordan Ayew is not a bad player for Palace. I think he can be a good squad player, but not as a starter. But so far this season, he's proved everyone wrong. I think Schlupp and Ayew, based on what I saw last season, probably better off coming off the bench. But Ayew, not more so because, he's been fantastic. But yeah, Schlupp, he has to be a super sub. He can't be a starter, Tim. He just can't be. I just don't know what he offers. Apparently, it's Ray Lewington's birthday. Happy birthday to Ray Lewington. Guy is saying, do you think this will be Ayew's last season with us or will he be offered another extension? I think you'll probably, get another extension. But I don't think that would be the worst thing in the world. As I said, if his form does drop, if he does lose pace, I think he'll still be a good option coming off the bench because he's got great technical abilities. When you take a look at this Palace team, this team can finish in the top 10. It can finish in the top 10. And this team can, in a way, if everyone performs to the levels, can finish higher than 10th as well. I'm not getting carried away. I need to see 10 games, but we have got some time to play. And the more importantly is how you play as a team. And so far, we've been playing well as a team, and we still need players to come back. So take it game at a time, people. Game at a time. That's my term. That's my term this year. Mitch saying, in the past, we always rotated one striker for another. When the starter got tired versus Wolves, we added the energy of fresh striker. So yeah, that's maybe the main reason why they won't start together. If we got another forward, then the argument could have been a bit better. But right now we are limited in terms of options. Shane saying Schlupp is an important squad player. Yeah, 100% agree as well. If you're enjoying the show, people, and if you're new here, hit the like button and subscribe. Let's try to get over 100 likes. I know a lot of people watch on replay as well. So if you're watching replay, hit the like button, people, if you're enjoying the show so far. Richard's saying, I think when Elise comes back, Schlupp will be on the bench. I think he has to be on the bench. You can make the argument even before Elise comes back as well. Shane saying we need to add the right players that will add to the squad, not get rid of good pros. Yeah, we have to improve the squad. Look, there's still weaknesses in the squad in terms of 25-man squad. We've known that as well. If there's few players, I don't think many people will be upset with IU or the Schlupp signing extensions at the club if they're used properly. If we actually invest in those positions as well, if we actually invest with quality, because they can offer something coming off the bench, and you do need them experienced players as well. So it's not a case of getting rid of IU and Schlupp, but sometimes where the club are operating cheap by offering them extension is because I know that we will use them as starters, and that's our main project. It's not a case of offering them extensions and still trying to improve in the position they're playing in. It's offering them extensions and keeping them, as starters when we know that Schlupp is not a starter. He shouldn't be a starter for a team that's trying to achieve, top 10 or top 7. He should be a squad player 100%, but not a starter for 38 games. Seek saying, if we beat Villa, then I'll say that we could aim for top 7 finish. Even if we beat Villa, I wouldn't say that early. If we can aim for top 7, that'll be fantastic because I want at least a point. But I think for me, anyways, we need to see 10 games or so. Gaika saying, I'm looking forward to see what Eze can do with Elise when he returns. He's given a bit more space. 100%. He was, both of them were fantastic towards the end of last season, and that's why Eze got called up as well. Remember, Elise assisted Eze a lot of times. So if you add Elise to this side that's already getting goals and assists, is from Jordan Ayew, I think it causes defenses way more problems than it does already. So I think that's what I'm saying. And with defense, yes, we're solid, but with attack, we have scored some goals, and 3 against Wolves, 4 against Plymouth. But I feel like our attack can still improve with the addition of Elise in terms of goals and assists. Tim saying it did feel like Eze got more space when Mateta and Eddie were up top. Yep, with more attackers naturally, with attackers that can contribute, teams had to focus on them. Richard also saying Eze and Edward on fire, and JP Mateta has exploded. Boom, boom, boom. Caleb saying, I need Elise to be on demon time when he's back. Big season for him and Ebbs. Yeah, we need to get the most out of these players. We need to try to finish as high as possible, and we'll see what happens at the end of the season. But another thing that I want to say quickly before we wrap up is Paddy McCarthy. Now, I know some of you go to games, some of you watch it on TV, but genuinely this season, of course, you have to give credit to Roy because he's a manager, and a good manager is not always a manager that just gets his tactics right. End of the day, you're managing a squad. It's about managing morale. It's about managing tactics, delegating stuff to your coaching staff. That's what makes a good manager, not just tactics and simple forms of just results. Of course, results is a massive thing, but it's what you do. And I'll be honest, we're seeing it with interviews at Palace TV, Paddy McCarthy, seeing that at games as well. And I remember after the Brentford game, Roy said that he spoke to the video analysts at halftime, and they suggested a change in terms of tactics. They done it, and it worked out. And you know what? The credit needs to go to Paddy McCarthy as well for our start to the season, because I'll be honest, I've been impressed by the tactical changes, and I know it's coming from him. You can see it when I go to games as well. You can see Paddy getting involved, and he seems like he's very heavily involved in terms of our decisions, in terms of tactics. And it has been working out so far. And it reminds me of a way, and I've said this many times before, of Stephen Reid leaving Palace when Roy was last at the club. He was part of the coaching staff. And then when he left, it didn't quite work out. And I think Paddy is playing a massive role, and he's being that bridge between the younger players and Roy as one. I think he deserves a bit of credit. Of course, I can't give him full credit because it's hard to say exactly what he's doing, but I know 100% that he has had an impact to this Palace team in terms of how we're playing, in terms of the results as well. So he's gone under the radar, and that might be our next manager. So we'll see, because that was a talking point when Roy got appointed as well for another season. And Sean says it as well. Paddy's our future manager. But look, people, I thought we'll jump on today to talk about international break season so far. If you have enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Probably be back from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, do more regular shows if there is, a bit more news with Palace. Thanks to everyone who's joining us live. Keep safe, people, and until next time, up the Palace.